Final Fantasy is one of the most influential and celebrated franchises in existence. It also has some of the most memorable characters and bosses. In this video, I'll be ranking my personal 10 favorite bosses in the franchise. There will also be heavy spoilers ahead, so if you haven't played the games, watch out. Now let's begin. In a somewhat controversial choice, I'm going with Chaos from Final Fantasy I. Young me was blown away by this battle, and this pick is purely from nostalgia. His insta-kill attack and resistance to magic allow for a challenging but also rewarding battle. To boot, he also has a cool backstory, which if you don't know, it's Garland's alter ego infused with the power of the Four Fiends. Plus, it's freaking chaos. At number 9, I chose Necron. I loved his design, and he doesn't have any real weaknesses, and wasn't really cheap like some JRPG bosses can be. The story behind it, if you don't know, is he witnesses what Kuja has done, and feels that all life exists to seek death. He wants to make everything a zero world. To me, that's pretty badass, and I loved Final Fantasy IX as well, but that said, there are still better bosses. Necron may even be hated to an extent, but I love him. Coming in at number 8, I went with the nostalgia pick again with Emperor from Final Fantasy II. Young me thought it was so cool that he was killed and sent back to Hell, and then ends up taking over Hell itself, which leads to a really epic and fun boss battle. Plus, I have a really soft spot for Final Fantasy II itself. This for me was purely a nostalgia pick as well, since you do end up fighting both a dark and a light Emperor, and I was blown away by the build-up and finish for Final Fantasy II. At number 7, I picked the Cloud of Darkness. The Cloud of Darkness is cool because they manifest after Xandu destroys the world's crystals, and the cloud then forms, wishing to turn the world into nothingness. Pretty heavy, right? The Warriors of Light also get killed and revived before the final battle itself, which is a great challenge and still holds up to this day. For 6, this almost felt bad having him this low, but in a series with amazing bosses, it was a tough call. Final Fantasy V is a fantastic game, and Neo Exdeath caps the culmination of a great villain and a final boss fight. This boss is so huge, you have to attack each part of it, and can really be frustrating if you're not properly prepared. Plus, I also found Exdeath to be a cool villain overall with the use of his void powers. When I finally beat him, it was a huge relief, and I definitely felt a huge sense of accomplishment. At number 5, I've picked the Undying. After Vayne merges with Vanette, he takes on the calamitous form of the Undying. His attacks like Mega Flare, Giga Flare, and Terra Flare attacks are totally crushing, and his magic barrier makes it hard to attack him. His appearance is super cool, and the battle against him is tough, making this final boss a really memorable one. Plus, the game itself just rocks. I mean, think about it this way. This guy merged with the Sky Fortress Bahamut. In my opinion, it's one of the more classic Final Fantasy boss fights, and that's really saying something. This may be controversial, but at 4 I chose Zeramis. Within the core of the Red Moon, after Fusoya and Golbez kill Zemus, then Zeramis forms and hurts Cecil and the party. I remember Youngmi being blown away by this at the time, and thinking that this is going to be an impossible battle. Not only is the design super cool, but as an opponent, they provided a really nice challenge to the player, and oh man was it satisfying to beat them. It took a prayer essentially to beat, and even in his death, he tells us that he will live as long as there is hatred in the hearts of people. What a fucking badass. Finally, in the top 3, Final Fantasy VIII shares a polarizing game, but one thing is for certain. Ultimecia is a fantastic and nuanced boss. Her goal is to compress all time and space. Sounds like a tall task, but pretty legit. Think of it like her becoming a one being of omnipotence. She's also highly manipulative in general, and has the ability to manifest life into inanimate objects, or from subconscious thoughts. She uses a time machine to possess Adia, and essentially makes Seifer her puppet. Over the course of the game, fight her a total of 6 times, each harder than the last. One cool aspect too is that she can absorb party members. So, not only from a story perspective is Ultimecia cool, but her battles were all really fun and epic, like a great Final Fantasy boss should be. This is why she's so high for me. At 2, this is probably the hardest choice for me since I absolutely love Kefka. He's one of my favorite video game villains, period. He's a total lunatic who loves causing chaos, and from a story perspective, I almost felt bad for him if he wasn't such a lunatic. He was the court mage of the Castilian Empire, and was the first experiment of the Magitech Knights. During all these events, he comes to the realization that all life is meaningless. He grew more unstable, and as he got more magicite from the Espers, he eventually becomes the god of magic. During the final boss fight, his attacks are not only powerful, but they're also erratic just like he is. He can use powerful elemental spells, and Heartless Angel, and the Light of Judgment, which are all super devastating. Not to mention that Dancing Mad is such a banger of a boss theme, and the spectacle of the battle is just so good. Kefka is the type of character you can introduce to new players, and they'll appreciate this character, but also Final Fantasy VI as well, since it's an all-time classic. At last, we made it to number 1. Talk about an icon in media. Sephiroth has in many ways changed our expectations on how we view villains in gaming. From Final Fantasy VII to Advent Children and the remake, Sephiroth is a superimposing villain. Sephiroth, throughout Final Fantasy VII, had caused anguish for Cloud, and at first being a war hero for the soldier program, falls into insanity finding out the nature of his past and seeking to reunite with his mother Genova. From burning down Nibelheim to his battles with Cloud, both mentally trying to break him and physically in their final battle, both original and remake battles are a masterclass in final boss battles, provided a great challenge with an absolutely satisfying finish. The spectacle of Sephiroth never ceases to amaze me. For my honorable mention, I had to include Ardyn. While Final Fantasy XV wasn't my favorite mainline game, I cannot deny that Ardyn was a cool character with a tragic background. The build-up with Noctis is one of the better aspects of this game, and the fight itself made up for a lot of the game's shortcomings. I would have felt bad not including Ardyn in some fashion in this video, and he just narrowly missed the cut. He's certainly an interesting villain nonetheless, and I love his character. Alright, I'll admit this ranking was actually very hard to pick since there's so many great enemies and bosses in Final Fantasy, but if you think I left out someone that should have been included, let me know in the comments. That will conclude my video, so if you enjoyed, just remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one. StarSoldier17, out.